James Cleverly, very excited to be talking to you. You had two of the biggest jobs in the cabinet, Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, right up until the Conservatives lost the election. You stand for the leadership. We'll talk about that a bit later. But what I really want to know is why you chose, and it was your decision, to be on the backbenchers. It seems like a waste of talent.
Well, firstly, I think it's an important reminder to anyone who gets into politics that whilst ministers, particularly cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister, are very, very high profile and they get a lot of attention and a lot of the coverage is about them, and it's easy to assume that the whole political system revolves just around ministers and senior ministers. The fact is there's a whole load of other really important work that goes on in Parliament, just really important scrutiny of legislation, the work that APPGs do, these cross-party groups, often working in the background, often unsung, and that matters. And also for me, having done those two very big jobs and having my voice, I suppose, focused on a small number of areas, there are some things that I wanted to be able to talk about. I wanted to be able to talk about small business, particularly hospitality businesses, cafes, restaurants, bars, that kind of stuff. And also because of what my wife went through, and we may well cover that in a bit, because of what my wife went through, I'm really, really keen to do more on early diagnosis of cancers and early treatment of cancers. And those are areas that I've not really had much of a chance to talk about. And so going on to backbenches gives me an opportunity to pick the things that I want to talk about rather than having them chosen for me. So
of those two sort of passions, you talked about the need for early diagnosis and that's a clear sort of ask. On hospitality, our pubs, our cafes, etc. Is there something that you think, they really should do X or Y? Or do you just want to be their voice, or how would you put it?
So on the cancer stuff, I think there is a real opportunity to use things like AI. And I know AI isn't going to be the solution to all our problems, but AI is really good at analysing big data sets and pattern spotting, which is the key for very early diagnosis, very early treatment. So I think there are opportunities there. And the government's talking the talk, but it's missing opportunities. In fact, there's been a cutting of funding to an AI-enabled cancer-related process. That's already there. And so we're not doing as much. The government isn't doing as much as it should or could. I want to push on that. So I'm very, very keen because I've seen the difference between Susie's treatment. She got diagnosed relatively late. She's in a really good place at the moment, but it would have been so much quicker and easier and less painful and cheaper if she had been diagnosed early. So I'm very keen on that. And I studied hospitality at university.
You did.
Which is not common for a politician.
No, it's not. No.
But it's also the industry where young people often get their first jobs. It's often the industry in particularly small rural communities. In a small village, it may well be that the pub is one of the only kind of retail outlets in the village.
Totally.
It's often the kind of employment where people can walk to work. And at the moment, because of some very foolish decisions that the government has put in place, it is really suffering. And I worry that we could see a lot of small businesses go under. So I'm passionate about those kind of things. And also, of course, foreign affairs and security, you never lose interest in that. So once you've been a foreign secretary, you can never really lose interest in those issues.
Now, you were Britain's first black foreign secretary. What, if anything, does that mean to you?
Well, I didn't obsess about it because, of course, by the time I became Foreign Secretary, having senior ministers that were from ethnic and minority backgrounds was kind of old news. We'd had, by that time, a couple of foreign secretaries, a couple of chancellors. For me, it wasn't a thing. Overseas, it was a thing. And it kind of snuck up on me because there was often quite a bit of interest. And the ambassadors and the high commissioners that I work with, the British ambassadors and high commissioners, would often, say, well, our host nation, our friends here, are quite interested in this dynamic. So it became quite a big thing. And I was always very proud, not for me personally, but that our political system, our society, was so comfortable in being represented on the international stage by someone who was, not exclusively ethnically British, but still completely British. And so for me, I think that was something that we should be very proud of. As I say, it wasn't just about me. It was about the fact that without even trying, we had an Asian Prime Minister, an Asian Home Secretary, African Heritage Foreign Secretary, an African Heritage Trade Secretary, etc., 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 etc.
I hadn't planned to ask you this, but just listening to you there, and I think I'm right in recalling this, but one of those non-white Home Secretaries was Suella Braverman. And this, what I think I'm right in recalling is that she said she couldn't be fully British recently.
Yeah, so I don't agree with that. I don't buy into that. And I think that is predicated on a very narrow definition of what Britain is. And I did an article years back, 2006, 2007, on Conservative Home, basically where I was saying, what my view of what Britishness is. And Britishness, and this is a byproduct of being an international trading nation and former imperial power. And we can't just magic that away. But one of the byproducts of that history, of which I'm very, very proud, is this huge cultural diversity. And so we have had Jewish heritage, we have had European heritage, non-European heritage, African heritage, all blending together. So a load of things that we regard as archetypally British, or indeed even English, are actually the modern amalgam of a whole load of other things that are from way beyond our borders, including the people. And that is Britishness. And so, even when classic, when people say, our traditional Anglo-Saxon roots, like Anglo-Saxons, so the people from Saxony that came to these islands, Anglo-German, like the royal family, and. There's so many examples of it. And I think we should be proud of it to say, look, this is really important. I don't buy into the idea of multiculturalism. Mm-hmm. That's different.
And that, which is a belief that actually we all may have different belief systems, and we can, rather than come together and
so for
understand
me,
each other, we live apart.
Yeah, my worry about the idea of multiculturalism is that we have multiple cultures.
Yeah,
and I don't buy that, because my view is the British culture is by definition multifaceted. There's always been multiple elements to it, and if we recognise that, we can actually say you can be British and proudly British, and you should be proudly British, and your religion is not necessarily a defining factor. Your ethnic heritage is not necessarily a defining factor. And the reason I think it's so important is because then it allows us to say we have pretty wide parameters. We're a pretty open and liberal society, but there are rules. Abide by the rules, and you know what? Be who you want to be. Don't abide by the rules, we have a problem. And we have been unwilling to say that in the name of multiculturalism. So we've basically said, there's the rules for ethnically British people, white people, but here's a different set of rules for this other group of people.
Yeah.
I have a real problem with that. We all play by the same rules, we all get on, you can live the life you want to lead within those broad parameters. And I think that's the difference between a multi-ethnic culture and a multicultural. Subtle difference, but for me, really key.
So multi-ethnic culture is healthy, but
we've always had it.
Yes.
We have always had it.
But multiculturalism can divide us in ways that we shouldn't be divided.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said when you did stand for the leadership that the Conservative Party should become more normal. What did you mean by that? You're pretty normal.
Well, that was part of my sales. Hopefully, that's the whole point of the line, wasn't it? To try and say we should be more normal. By the way, that's me, I think talking to a I've got two sons in their early 20s, talk to their friends, the kind of people, entrepreneurial, that should instinctively be our target market as conservatives. And there are lots of things that I think are at the heart of conservatism that they agree with. Personal freedom and choice, not being taxed too highly, not being dictated to by the state, having the opportunity to live the life that they want to live, make money and keep a decent amount of the money that they make. All these things fit neatly into my political philosophy.
Yeah.
But they are not in the mindset of voting Conservative at the moment.
Hang on, do your sons vote Conservative? Or you don't have to tell me that, but you couldn't swear to it. But people who are young, no, fair enough. But you're talking about somebody who is 20 and wants to do well in life.
Yeah.
They wouldn't necessarily go, and that means I'm a Conservative. Perhaps in a way that, I don't know how, I'm 52. Maybe you're around the same age. But I think people did used to say that when we were growing up.
Yeah, and I think that part of the reason that it is, for many, many people that should be thinking about voting Conservative, but who aren't thinking of voting Conservative, is because there is something that they feel is a bit at odds. I don't like to use the word brand when it comes to a political party, because it's more than that, I think more important than that, but it's the best shorthand that I can think of at the time. At the moment, our brand seems to be disconnected with their aspirations.
Yeah.
The product is not in the wrong place, but the brand feels as if it's in the wrong place. And I think the kind of language that we use, I mean, you know this, you've been in the House.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly, people start developing this weird language.
It's crazy.
That you never, ever hear anywhere else.
Absolutely.
One of my bugbears is deeply concerned. It did my head in when I was at the Foreign Office. The number of things drafted in my name saying, the UK is deeply concerned about the... I'm like, why are we telling people how we feel? We should be telling people what we do.
What we're going to do. Mm.
I've never been at a table in a pub or at a party or anywhere outside politics where I've said to someone, what do you think about this issue? And they've gone, you know what, I'm deeply concerned about the... And there's a whole list of things we say, things we do that are just so out of date or at odds with the real world.
That's that's the political class. That's not specific to your party. It's the
political class, but the point is my party is the party that has just lost a general election
badly.
And needs to lick its wounds and think about how it resets itself for the future. Now, if the Labour Party wants to continue not being normal, that's their problem. But my party, we need to recognise that we need to reconnect with a whole load of people. And actually, when I say young, I don't just mean people in their 20s like my kids. I mean, looking at the most recent election results, young means anyone under 50.
I know.
And I think it's a worry for political parties in general, but we have a particular duty within the Conservative Party to get our act together and do so quickly.
How do you do that? I mean, that's perhaps too big a question. But are there any things that it's very, very hard once you lost an election. I got elected in 2010, right? The Labour Party had just been kicked out of power. I mean, no one wants to listen. Do you know what I mean? It's hard. William Hague was perfectly good leader of the opposition then. Nobody wanted to listen to him.
So this is the point. It's about who's talking and who's listening. And when you are forced into opposition, the first thing you think, and it is the right thing to think, but the first thing you think is, right, how do I get people to listen to what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that is understandable. I think the bigger question is, how do I get back into the habit of listening to people? Rather than getting them to listen to us, how do we listen to them? So one of the things that slight behavioural change after I left government is I started consuming media differently. So I don't obsessively listen to talk radio or news radio. I listen to music radio. So
which has bulletins, which are listened to by millions and millions of people.
So suddenly I get the massively filleted news that most people get.
Absolutely.
Not the mainstream, not mainlining like 4 hours speech radio news. So you just get the top slice. And it's a real eye-opener. And when we talk about how we get cut through, people say, oh, I've got cut through because I was on Radio 4. Like,
I know.
That is not cut through.
I know.
When Chris Evans is talking about you, 100%. That's cut through.
100%.
You know, when
100%. Or if you're in Metro, rather than...
That's right.
I don't know what single paper, but, you know, Metro even, which people, you know, will pick up as free.
And so I've started now listening to radio and watching TV and looking at things like normal people.
Yeah.
How to be more normal, do what normal people do. And you realise that you don't need to be shouting about everything all the time. What you need to do is you need to understand what really worries people, what they want you to deal with. And if you have answers to those, then people will listen to those answers. You need to be thinking about all the other detail as well, but that's not the retail part of it. And this is where it is right for parties and opposition to think, right, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with these things? But I tell you something, I look at my old role in foreign affairs, and I'm very passionate about how important foreign affairs is. But you know what my people in Essex worry about? Potholes.
Absolutely. Well, and the government would say they're getting on with that. Mind you, your government also said they were getting on with it, and they're still there.
But it's one of those things because issues in the Middle East, which were a really big part of my job, are really, really important. But I tell you something, if you hit a pothole and you've damaged your car, and then suddenly you've got a really big repair bill and that kind of stuff, the work that the British diplomats are doing in the Middle East is just an irrelevance because suddenly you've got bills to pay. And listening to those things, so listening a bit more than talking, and again, part of the reasons why I think it's useful going on the back benches is it does give you more time to listen, and you're not constantly thinking, I need to get on the front pages, I need to get on the news bulletins, I need to make a speech on this, I need to make a speech on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. I mean, everybody expected you to be victorious in that leadership election.
Well,
history is history. There were actually quite a lot of my friends in the Labour Party that was sort of split. So they're like, oh, he's a really nice guy and he should get it. Oh, but that might be a bit problematic for us. You didn't get it. But, I think it's a very balanced political conversation we're having. Your leadership, I mean, you say, you're going to say never, aren't you? To your future, I'm guessing. You can say whatever as you want, but are we going to? You've got nothing. Do you have anything to say to me about your future?
Look, as I say, in the short term, I'm making the most of the fact that I no longer wake up in the morning, put on my glasses, fumble for my phone, and check to see what messages have come in from my private office overnight. I spent years when I was the Minister for the Middle East, when I was the Foreign Secretary during a major European conflict, when I was Home Secretary with all the stuff that you have to do with the police, immigration, the security services. I would wake up every morning grateful that the phone hadn't gone off overnight, checking to see what messages, expecting, my private office to say, Home Secretary, can you call me as soon as you see this message, please? So I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I am genuinely enjoying a bit of that. And I just say never again. Don't rule anything in, don't rule anything out. That will set hairs running, I'm sure. But do
you know what I think about your time out of away from the front line of politics? That you're, well, let me put it another way. What I'm seeing from the front benches of both the government and the Tory party now is panic about reform. And, sort of various things that they're doing, but you sort of look at it and go, you're doing that because you think that might win some voters back who are going to go to reform. So from your relaxed and thoughtful and considered position, what do you, do you have any views on it? Do you sort of...
So firstly, I think it's important that you understand, or one understands, or political parties understand what is cause and what is effect. Because if you try to calibrate your actions to respond to the existence of reform, or Nigel Farage getting headlines, which he's very, very good at. He's one of the best political communicators of our generation. I've worked with some fantastic politicians, and he is a fantastic political communicator. He's never run anything,
no,
but in the job that he's got at the moment, he is, I suppose, as good an example of what an insurgent political party needs at its helm. Okay, so we've got to recognise that, and dismissing him is an error. But the question we ask ourselves is, does reform exist because of other things that have happened? And my contention is that it does. And so if we address the reasons why people are going to reform, you don't then need to address reform. And this, I think, is what we need to do. So why do people feel so disillusioned with the political class en masse? Because he is as critical of us as he is of the Labour government. Why are a lot of young men feeling very, very disillusioned, particularly with politics? Why do we not have answers to their questions? Why do we not seemingly have a way of giving them the opportunity they feel they need? Now, I don't have all the answers at my fingertips at the moment. This is what a period in opposition is about. If you address those things, you don't then need to play whack-a-mole with policies that reform might put forward. You've got to address the fundamentals. And the reason I say that is because you look at what's happening across mature democracies the world over, is that the particularly younger voters are polarising massively. The recent German elections, young men went AfD, young women went...
right-wing party.
The right-wing party. Young women went Die Linke, which is the left-wing party. They both split from the centre. And although the CDU, which is our sister party in Germany, we've now got a chancellor from the CDU, actually their vote share, just like the Labour Party, actually is less impressive than the headline numbers. And the younger voters have deserted them. Same thing's happening in the States, same thing's happening in France, Holland, Belgium, UK. So therefore, there is a bigger issue than just Nigel Farage and one party. And if we make the mistake of obsessing about him and the one party, we will fail to address the underlying issues that are causing that disenchantment. So you've got to get things in the right order. Now, again, Nigel's very good at spotting opportunities to be seen as the champion of the people.
Indeed.
And, that says people want a champion. I don't think he's got the answers. I don't think that Reform as a party have got the answers. But there is a clear political need that should be addressed. I think my party needs to think about that, because if we don't, we leave a vacuum that will be filled by others.
I want to move on and to conclude, really, by talking about something which would have meant more to you and your family than any of the things that we've been discussing so far. And that is that your wife, Susie, she was diagnosed with triple positive breast cancer in December 2021. Then came a single mastectomy, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy. She finished treatment in April 2023. 2 young boys, well, ish.
6.5 foot, but yeah, each.
How did you get through that period as a family?
So firstly, and I would say this, wouldn't I? But I mean, Susie is absolutely amazing. And so her strength and resilience was infectious. And because she was strong, I was able to stay pretty strong. I've relied a lot on friends and family and colleagues, and that's when you really know who your good friends are. And I've been blessed because I've had some amazing people. I'll be honest with you, Liz Truss, who was Foreign Secretary, so I was basically her number 2 in the Foreign
Yes.
Office. She was absolutely brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant. I know it's very easy and it's politically fun to have a dig at Liz, but she was absolutely brilliant. And she basically said, I'm not going to take any work off of you unless you need me to. So you keep doing your job until you can't, and then step back until you need to step up again, and then I'll... So she was fantastic. And as were a load of other people. Rishi was amazing, and loads of fantastic friends and family, and that really helped. And the other, as I say, the other thing, which is just the medical professionals that we worked with. I mean, Susie, she was being treated at Guy's and St Thomas's, just over the river from Parliament. Some amazing people, too many to name, in a whole range of disciplines. I just thought, it's cancer, so there's the oncology people.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. This is army of people, completely fantastic, who moved with a speed that was breathtaking. Because as I say, Susie was diagnosed quite late, and it was touch and go for a while. And the NHS is not perfect. My mother was an NHS midwife. I love it to bits, but I recognise it is far from perfect. But when it needs to go into that kind of emergency mode, it is something else. And as I say, it was, I think I had wars in the Middle East to deal with. I had the invasion of Ukraine to deal with, and weirdly enough, having a job that required a lot of focus and attention meant that I wasn't obsessing. I wasn't spending too much time worrying about what might happen next. And Susie and I lived very much day to day. So she had a one round of chemo, and it always got worse. This is what's really hard to get your head around. The first round of chemo is pretty horrible. Second round, it gets a bit worse, and then worse, and it gets a lot worse before it starts getting better. And Susie went through hell. But yeah, it's a real reminder you can't do anything meaningful on your own, and people did rally round.
And just very, very finally, can you be at the top of politics and be a good dad and a good son and a good husband? Are there any times where you thought, you know what, I should have been there for that, whatever that is?
So this could be a whole podcast all by itself. You have to make sacrifices and compromises. And anyone, but that is not unique to politics. I've got friends in the military.
Yeah.
I've got friends in other very intense occupations. And, the repository of love that you have within a family is endless, but there are only so many hours in the day. And one of the things that really struck me when I went onto the backbenches, having been in government, is just the number of hours that you are given back. You're given back something like 50 hours a week, which then means that you can spend some of those hours more time in the constituency, more time with your family, more time thinking, and all those things are really, really important. But the truth is that, if I was on a plane flying to Kenya, by definition, I could not also at the same time be at home, being with Susie and my family. And I can send them video messages and text messages and that kind of stuff. But you can't physically be there. So there are trade-offs, and we've got to be realistic about that. I don't regret any of it, but it's really nice now having a bit of a breather.
I found that, I love these interviews, but I found that so refreshingly interesting, because we talked a lot about politics there. It seems to me that you're completely liberated by this period, however, whether it be permanent or temporary. That was a really thoughtful conversation, James Cleverly. I'm really thrilled that you did it. I was really looking forward to it. You haven't let me down. Thank you, James Cleverly.
Thank you.